Welcome back in, everybody. A Tuesday edition of Birds 365, joined now by Les Bowen, longtime cover of the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the best to ever do it. Les, thanks for joining the show, man. Great to have you on.
Hey, good to see you guys again.
Yeah, Les. All right, bringing the energy. I thought Zach was on. I wasn't expecting you to be that excited.
Yeah, it's good to, I'm like you, I'm not in Foxboro, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah, that is
a weird place for a pro football team to play and practice.
Yes, it is.
It's
very
as if
weird.
the Eagles, if Quakertown or maybe Glassboro had built a stadium for the Eagles and they practiced and played there. That's kind of what that's like.
Yeah, but you get so when you get to Green Bay, that's great. And it's like you got a football field in the middle of a neighborhood, and people are renting out their.
But there's a reason for that. I mean, the Packers go back to the founding of the NFL.
Yes.
Foxboro was just whatever skeevy owner maybe it was Victor Kayam or somebody like that. Yeah. Didn't want to pay money for a stadium, and so some people out in the wilderness of Massachusetts near the Rhode Island border, decided to build him a stadium.
Yeah. It's not that's what it doesn't have that same feel. That's what I'm trying to say as Green Bay, which is tremendous and everything about it. But yeah, Foxboro is the exact opposite. So I'm like, I mean, you've made that drive, I'm sure, many times. It is brutal to get through.
I usually stayed in Providence and drove up.
Yes.
That's Providence how far it is from Boston, is that people actually, teams do this too. Fly into Providence, stay in Providence, and just drive up from there. It's quicker.
It's easier. And Providence is a nice little city.
Yeah.
Love Providence. But up inside baseball, let's talk about actual football. Probably the most important, which I don't like missing. By the way, right after you left camp, I tripped over a tripod.
Oh God!
Yeah, I've been dealing with a calf thing. I didn't trip, I didn't fall, but I strained it pretty good. But anyway, so
it's a dangerous time of year for everybody.
It is
a dangerous. If you don't stretch,
Exactly, and getting old sucks. But I digress. The progression of this team, and it's probably the most important practice of the summer because it's a joint practice, and this is the only one. The Eagles typically have had quite a few. This year, it's the only one, unless I don't think this is the best. New England's not very good. I'd like a better test on paper.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, you're at the behest of other teams and you can't necessarily work things out. With Baltimore would have been great, but they're playing each other later in the season. So it's important, but are you going to temper it a little bit no matter what because of the opposition?
I guess so. It's weird that they're only doing one day. I understand the game is Thursday.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't you have gone up and practiced there yesterday? Because the New England practiced yesterday. They just didn't practice with the Eagles. I've never heard of just doing one day.
Well, they did one day with Indianapolis last year.
You're right.
They did.
I forgot that. But that's just that's a lot of money to spend to bring all your stuff up for practice.
It is. Yeah.
Just to do it one day. And if the weather isn't good or, I mean, it can, you're pinning a lot on this, it seems like. If you're the Eagles, I don't quite get it. It is, they talk about how important this is and how it's more important than the preseason games. And then they only schedule one day of it in the entire preseason. So that's very odd. And you're right. The Patriots aren't good. You want to see, how Quinyon Mitchell looks against a real quarterback. Well, Drake May, whoever those other guys are.
Ellie Zappi, Joe Milton. They're excited about Joe Milton because he had a fourth quarter drive in the preseason. Yeah. It's not good. It's not good. So I don't know.
But we take what the coaches tell us about this at face value, that this is so valuable. And I can understand theoretically it is. I mean, it's like a preseason game, only you're controlling it instead of the referees controlling it. You can say we're going to do a period of red zone, where in a real preseason game, you might not get much red zone, or something like that. But I went to the most recent one I went to was Cleveland 2 years ago. And we kept waiting for matchups that never happened. Cleveland held out Myles Garrett. The Eagles had several key guys a little dinged up. And it just didn't – what you actually saw on the field was a lot of Jack Stoll, It didn't really – we had it all built up as, oh, boy, the Eagles and the Browns,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the Browns came here last year after that. So they did that home and home sort of. And Myles Garrett did practice the first day. And boy, he ate the Eagles alive.
And that's what
they held him out the second day. Held him out the second day. And it's like, I got that feeling. I'm like, well, Myles didn't practice and the Eagles looked a lot better. So, yeah, you always have that context, but that's practice in general, Les. There's a lot, and our buddy Elliot Shore Parks with the stats, and we bring it up, and Jalen Hurts hasn't thrown an interception. Like, there's so much that goes into that. Like, what are the Eagles trying to accomplish in a certain drill? Sometimes it's a bad thing, because one of the things I'm concerned about is sort of an overcorrection on the offense. And by that, I mean,
if he doesn't take any chances.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you get to the preseason game in Baltimore and he's not playing. So it has nothing to do with Jalen. Their longest completion was for 11 yards, Les. 11 yards. Everything.
Well, then you reel into even though it's a new offense and all that good stuff, and they need the work, you get into the Nick Sirianni's favorite thing, which is we don't want to show them anything to put it on film. Well, the teams will know what we're going to do, which
these
is
these guys are unbelievable with their
Nick
you
is
all
the
run the
I've
same thing.
Nick is the worst I've ever seen. It's just ridiculous. It's like I can't tell you, who the kicker is going to be Sunday.
And by the way, Les, it was great because Jake Laser was there on Sunday. And, nothing against Jay. I mean, Fox pays the NFL very handsomely for extra access. So he's on the field with Dom and everybody else. And he's taking video of practice right in the middle of team drills, which we would be shot by the snipers.
Yeah, they run around yelling at you. No cameras, no cameras.
And he's shooting video and putting it on Twitter and X. What happened to competitive advantage?
And they don't let any of the other rights holders do that. I mean, that's really weird. That's very, very odd. I wonder if they even understood what he was doing, but.
Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe not. I think if CBS pushed, they could do it as well. I mean, those $1 billion checks take you a long way. I'm not blaming Jay, but my whole point is it's not going to matter from a competitive advantage standpoint.
Right.
That Jake Laser put up one play in team drills.
Yeah. Or if you actually ran some of your offense in a preseason game with third string players, I don't think everybody would have people know what Kellen Moore does. I don't think he's invented some new concept that he's going to spring on the NFL game one in Brazil. I mean, it's just run your damn offense. You haven't had.
Exactly. And ironic thing is, if you ask Kellen Moore, a lot of Eagles fans, understandably, because of what went on last year, are excited about all the motion and the bunch formations. And if you asked him, and he's honest, he said, what's the most important thing? Clean operation, execution. He talks that stuff.
Which is, you need to run it to do that.
Yeah. They had 4 or 5 false starts the other day.
Yeah.
So people are going to be pretty upset with the motion if they keep jumping off sides before they even snap the ball. it's always about execution.
Yeah.
But they're all running the same stuff. Kellen Moore's been an offensive coordinator for 6 years now. As you said, everybody's got every piece of film. Even fans can pay $99 to get it.
Yeah.
And they still think they're the CIA, Les.
Yeah,
It's amazing to me.
It's a habit, at this point. And it used to be, it's the whole thing changed around social media. There was a time in the Andy Reid era when we went out to practice on Thursdays and Fridays. We watched practice,
Oh, yeah.
With the understanding that we wouldn't report on, if they were running a fake punt or something like that, we wouldn't report it. But all that is gone. We don't get any. We watch stretching drills now during the season. We don't ever see the real practice, because that would be like the Dr. Strangelove. They'll see the big board.
Yeah, you're right, Les. Social media definitely changed it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doug used to let us watch install, which was pretty cool, but somebody reported Jason Peters was going to play, and that was the end of that. And we haven't been able to see anything. So when training camp ends, that'll be the end of our full practice access. We can watch the entire practice now. And there's certain things they don't want us to report. And it's usually meaningless. I found out the kickoff rule was one of them. Like, how are they going to do it? Everybody does the same damn thing.
Yeah.
They got dual returners, and the one that doesn't catch it turns into the lead blocker.
No kidding.
Yeah. Eagles are doing it the same exact way as everybody else. It's you're right about the competitive advantage stuff. It's gone way too far, but it's not going to change.
No, it sure isn't. It's only going to get worse.
To get back on the field, the Baltimore game, because the defense, the starters played a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, those linebackers were bad, Les.
Yeah.
They were bad. And the ironic
thing, Bound thing, this has, I don't want to interrupt you, John, but sometimes coaches and coordinators get an idea of something, and it's really hard to disabuse them of that idea. Zach Bond has never been a real linebacker.
No.
He's 27 years old. Is this working? Fangio's very enthusiastic. It kind of reminds me, and I said this to someone else, of Jim Johnson and Mark Semino. Jim Johnson was convinced that Mark Semino was who he needed at middle linebacker instead of when they got Jeremiah Trotter back after Trotter had left. And it took a long time. Trotter spent several weeks running down the field on special teams.
And I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great comparison, Les, because Jim Johnson was a great coordinator.
He sure was, but he didn't understand that Mark Semino, he loved the fact that Semino was never caught out of position, that he could diagnose, he was instinctive. The problem was he couldn't make a play once he got there. The running back would run over him or the receiver would run past him once he got to the point where he was supposed to be. But to Jim, the fact that he got to the point where he was supposed to be was like, oh my goodness, he doesn't get Trot would get play action. He'd be running up the middle, to stop the run, and they'd throw over him and stuff. So, but this was just, Mark Semino. Oh boy, and no, and I just
that's kind of my, because Vic Fangio is a great defensive coordinator, but that doesn't mean he's perfect. Like, I think there's a lot of, he gets a lot of cachet, reputation, whatever, and people just default and say, well, Vic likes it. Well, sometimes, and that's why, like your comp, Jim Johnson, nobody's going to criticize Jim.
Right.
Everybody makes mistakes. And I watched that game, and I asked Vic the question. I'm the one who asked it. I said, Jacoby played pretty well. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. played pretty well. Ben Van Sumeren played very well. Zach Bowen and Devin White, he did, but he did in the game, but it was late in the game.
Yeah.
And Vic pointed out correctly, contextually, they're playing against second and third team guys, sometimes fourth team guys. So you got to put it in context, which he's completely right.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sitting there saying, Devin White and Zach Bowen, I didn't see Lamar Jackson out there. I didn't see Derrick Henry out there. The Ravens didn't play anybody on offense. So they were playing against second team guys and they were faltering. So to me, that's a little bit weighted.
Yeah.
As opposed to what N'Kobe and Trot did. I don't know.
It's an open
we at the
question as
time
to whether they have any starting quality linebackers at this point.
Well, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
I think they got a bunch of good backup linebackers. I've said that.
Yeah.
I think they're solid. They have solid linebacker depth. They have no starters at linebacker. That's a concern to me.
What the hell happened to Devin White? Was it the injuries, do you think? The two knees, same knee twice, I guess, in 2 years.
I mean, I've always been unless, and PFF is not the gospel, but unless they have a personal animus to Devin White, which I do not think they have, he has not played well his entire career, with the exception of the run to the Super Bowl, which is one of the great anomalies because he was phenomenal in those 3 games. He was off the charts, number 5 overall pick. He looked like the number 5 overall pick. But boy, Les, his film is bad, and it's always been bad.
The one thing that I've heard is, sometimes at some positions, a lot has to do with who you're playing with. And Levante David, when Devin White came into the league, Levante David was an elite linebacker.
He's still good. He's like 35 and he's still good.
Maybe he made Devin White look better than, Devin White was able to sort of make plays that people noticed, I don't know. I don't watch the.
Well, he does make splash plays because, he's a great athlete. So if he guesses right, he can make a splash play. But I don't anticipate
Zach Bowen will have the same effect on Devin White as Levante David.
I don't think. Nor Vita Vea in front of him as a note. But hopefully Jordan Davis. But here's the grades of Devin White from PFF, Les. 2019 was his rookie season. They graded 90 linebackers. He was 68th. 2022, it was 83. He was number 62. 2021, it was 86. He was number 79. 2022, there were 81. He was number 74. And 2023 last year, there were 82. He was number 80. I mean, typically what I say about PFF is if they say you're playing well, you're probably playing well. If they say you're playing poorly, you're probably playing poorly. And then there's a lot of context in between. As you mentioned, who are you playing with? Are you playing injured? Stuff like that doesn't factor into it. But boy, he's been consistently poorly graded throughout his NFL career. So that's number one. And number two, Les, there's 31 other teams in this league. This was the former number 5 overall pick. The Eagles gave him $3.5 million and some incentives. That is a red flag, don't you think?
It is. Yes, it is. And there's the fact that Tampa has its ups and downs, obviously, especially now that Brady's gone. But you kind of think those guys know a little bit about defense.
What's hot?
They tend to be good there, year in and year out. So that says a lot to me.
Yeah, it's not like they had Matt Patricia down there. No doubt about that. Les, let's move into another question I have on the defense is the edge rushers, and namely Bryce Huff. They replaced this guy. Hassan Reddick is back in the news. Now he wants out of the Jets. The Eagles' replacement for him is Bryce Huff. We haven't heard much on him in camp. Is it too early to overreact, Les, or am I right to be concerned?
Oh, I'm concerned. I never thought. First of all, it was a trade Howie Roseman didn't want to make, and Howie was very defensive about it back in the winter.
Yeah.
There's no question. Hassan Reddick is a more talented pass rusher than Bryce Huff. Huff is younger. Maybe he can develop. I think that was their hope. But he's really only had the one good year last year. I don't think he has the talent level of Hassan Reddick, but you see what's up with Hassan Reddick right now. I mean,
Yeah.
The Jets line on this through their media is that when they made the trade, they weren't really incredibly stupid. They were just a little bit stupid. They thought they had agreement from Hassan and his representatives that he would play this year. They would adjust the contract. They'd give him a couple million and some incentives. And, he'd play this year and they'd work on a long-term deal. And then mandatory minicamp came along and Hassan said, no, I don't want to do that. And now they're in Neverland. That's why Hassan Reddick isn't here. I think there's a lot of, I don't really know much about his representation or anything like that. I don't do that kind of stuff anymore in my day-to-day work. Thank God.
That's Tory Dandy, who's he's
well-known
done,
agent. Yeah.
He's done $1 billion, right? So it's not like, I think this is player driven. I think, look, Hassan has a chip on his shoulder, and rightfully so. He's been one of the NFL's best pass rushers, but for whatever reason, people don't put him up there with Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, those types of guys. And he's got a chip on his shoulder.
But what he wants is to be paid for what he's done, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't get that. It's a shame. The Cardinals wasted the first 3 years of his career. He's now almost 30 years old. But nobody can fix that now.
No, nobody can.
He needs to play this year and do really well, and then maybe get a big money deal from somebody. But in the meantime, the Eagles are left with Bryce Huff, as you mentioned, Xander, and he's okay. I don't think he's bad, but they won't be as good on the edge unless some of the young guys unless Sweat has a comeback year, unless Nolan Smith breaks out. They need maybe this Jalix Hunt, maybe somebody. They're not as good on the edges. They ought to be really good inside. Yeah. And maybe that will help the edge. Maybe people will have to double up the inside guys with Jalen Carter and all that.
Yeah.
But the edge isn't going to be what it was with Hassan Reddick here, because he's one of the most talented players in the league. I mean, that year, the Super Bowl year 2 years ago, I didn't cover Reggie White when he was here. I've never seen anybody.
One of the great defensive seasons in the Eagles history from an individual.
Yes.
Player.
Yes.
At Les Bowen, I know you got to leave at 9:45. Les, you got a hard out.
Yeah.
At PHLY, make sure you see Les there writing. Real quick, our buddy Tim McManus, the big story.
I've got a few more minutes. It's all right. I can answer that one. Yeah.
The most interesting part to me was Jalen reaching out to Wink Martindale, which Wink said in his 40 years of coaching, he's never had that before. I took that as a positive.
Oh,
I didn't think the piece was negative at all. A lot of people took it negative.
It was a great. Fans exasperate me sometimes. Yeah. I understand a little bit of it, but I've been yelling all offseason that we needed a real explanation of what the hell happened, and we never got one from the Eagles. And this is the best attempt at that I've seen. And it didn't just go through last year. It showed you what they're trying to do to make sure this doesn't happen again, which I think is very necessary and very, is very welcome to me. But the Wink Martindale thing, to me, that's something like a Tom Brady would do that, or a Peyton Manning. You can take the attitude of, what was Nick going to be offended? I don't care. I think that's to go to the guy that gave you trouble and say, okay, what did you see here? Why did you want to do this against us? You know, what did you see me do? That's next level to me. That's tremendous on just the fact that he cares enough to do that. First of all, is encouraging, and second, that he's smart enough to do it and presumably take to heart what Wink Martindale told him. Yes, do that. Yes,
I agree, Les, for sure. I'm with you on that all the way.
Yeah. And he did and I think it was positive as a whole for Jalen Hurts, and it displays his work ethic and why he's gotten to the point he has. As people forget he's only 26, a second round pick. This guy wasn't a top 5 pick,
right?
And overall, I think it was very positive look inside to Jalen Hurts in his preparation.
One more point on that piece that I wanted to make. It amazed me. We all saw that happen down the stretch with the Eagles. Over 2 months, this unfolded week after week after week after week after week. Did it bother you that, given the things that were said in there and the things that people knew were going on, that Howie Roseman or Jeffrey Lurie couldn't get people in a room, Nick, Jalen, Brian Johnson, whomever, and somehow get this worked out to some?
I mean, I still think they don't know what happened. You pointed out, I still think they honestly don't know what happened, and that's a problem to me. And I've said from the start, Les, Jeffrey Lurie, I mean, I don't like this setup. That's not a criticism of Kellen Moore as a coach, as Vic Fangio as a coordinator, even Nick Sirianni as a head coach. I don't. This setup is, look, if he's the head coach, he's got to be the head coach. He's got to have autonomy over the offense. Whether he's going to let Kellen, but if something goes wrong and he doesn't like, he's got to be able to say, I got to do this. And I'm not sure he has that autonomy. And that, to me, is a very difficult tightrope to traverse.
Which would essentially mean there's almost three. It's like a 3-headed head coach. I mean, you have Nick, who's the vibes coordinator, I guess. Then the Kellen, who controls the offense, and Vic, who controls the defense. You're right, John. It is an interesting setup.
Yeah, and we'll see. As long as they're winning, it'll be great. But if
everything's great.
Bad, there's going to be a lot of intrigue and a lot of so-and-so said to so-and-so that,
that one of the truest sports isms of all time. Winning cures everything. It does. Yep. Nobody complains if you're winning. So you're right there. And that's because Les Bowen's a winner. At Les Bowen, read him at PHLY. Always good to catch up with you, Les. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah. Les, thanks for being on, man. We appreciate it. We'll be reading your work on PHLY. Thanks, brother.
All right.
There's Les Bowen joining us on Birds 365. Great stuff from Les Bowen. He gave us a couple extra minutes, so we appreciate that from Les. Had a hard out at 45, and he gave us the extra 5 minutes to talk about the article. I thought he brought some good insights there. Johnny Mac will take our final commercial time out. Still big viewership on the show. We appreciate all you guys watching. Make sure you smash that like button. Stay tuned. Birds 365 will be right back with a final preview of what the Eagles are doing today in their joint practice down at Foxboro. Stay tuned.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.